Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM, AM 630. WMAL.
7:07 on the Morning Majority. The two Brians are in, Mary Catherine off today, and we are joined by Josh Earnest, White House Deputy Press Secretary. Josh, good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us on the morning. We're doing very well. First question.
Yes, sir.
You got a key procedural vote in the Senate today on the president's job bill. The president going to Orlando to pitch his proposal. The president has said many times, the White House has insisted that Republicans are trying to block the jobs bill. But according to a report in the Washington Post today, there are a number of Democrats in the Senate who are not enamored with the bill. Joe Manchin, Joe Texter, Ben Nelson, Joe Lieberman are all expected to vote no, or are leaning very strongly in the direction of a no. Max Baucus, Jim Webb said to be undecided. So how can you say that it's Republicans that are blocking the bill when you may not even get 51 votes?
Well, I think there are two parts to this. The first is that's why they're having the vote today. And, you know, that there's a famous expression in sports, it's why they play the game, right? So today is the day in which members of the Senate are going to be able to sort of take a side in terms of, you know, whether they're going to stand with the president to create jobs, to cut taxes for middle-class families, cut taxes for small business owners, or are they going to stay on the side of millionaires and billionaires and protect their current tax rate and protect their tax loophole? So
but
they'll be on the record to decide. But let me do one other point, and then you can go to your next one. Right. Which is we are confident that we are going to get an overwhelming majority of Democrats, and we'll see whether, you know, there are some that are out there that are saying, you know, we're not sure if we're going to support this. Well, you know, like I said, by the end of the day today, we'll know. What's clear is that, or at least, you know, what seems to be clear is that there are very few, if any, Republicans who are even considering this. And I think that's what sort of leads to the president making the case that, look, if we got, you know, a strong majority of Democrats and a strong majority of Republicans, right, then we should be able to move forward on this. And
but you've got 53 Democratic votes in the Senate, and there's I think, a fairly good chance that not even 50 of those will support the president's job bill.
Well, we'll see. I'm not sure that I agree with that. But I'm the last one to begin sitting here making predictions on what's going to happen in Capitol Hill.
Real quick,
again, that's the reason we're having the vote today. Real
quick question: did the White House weigh in with the National Park Service to extend the permits for the protesters over at Freedom Plaza on any level?
I got to admit to you, I don't know about that. That would be out of the ordinary in terms of my understanding about the way the process works.
Well, we know that the president has expressed empathy for the protesters.
Well, I think that the president has said that he certainly is sympathetic to the frustration that they feel about the current state of our economy, and you know, frankly, the frustration that the president himself has articulated about Washington, D.C. not being able to get their act together in terms of getting something done to weigh in on the side of consumers here.
I want to talk about Solyndra. We know that the president was getting advice from many quarters. The administration was getting advice from many quarters not to give that $535 million loan to Solyndra. The OMB was concerned about it. There are memos that show that. Democratic donors were writing to Valerie Jarrett. The Treasury Secretary weighed in against it. Yet the thing was pushed forward. We know that pressure was applied to OMB to make a decision in that direction by folks in the Vice President's office and by the Office of the Chief of Staff, Rahm Emanuel. Why were so many warnings ignored?
Well, it seems to me that, I mean, what you've done is you've laid out a pretty good case to explain to your listeners that this is a decision that was not influenced by politics, right? This is something that was driven by the merits. And that there are experts at the Department of Energy who reviewed this decision. These are people who have, you know, a long career of doing this. These are career officials who examine.
But your own Secretary of Treasury didn't like this idea. Yeah, didn't want to go forward with it.
And the point of this program is, the point of a loan guarantee program, is that these are projects, these are investments in the kinds of industries that are inherently difficult. Right?
But if I got a decision about $535 million, Josh, $535 million on the line, I got to make a decision about whether to go forward with that, and I got all of these red flags going off. I would be really hesitant to do that.
The merits were saying, hey, this is not a good move. This is not what should be done at this point.
There are people who are saying that. There are also highly skilled experts who are making a merit-based decision at the Department of Energy who reach a different conclusion. Now, look, these are close calls. Again, that's the whole reason that you need a government loan guarantee, is because this is a difficult call. These are emerging industries. This is at the front end. There are a lot of other people who reach the same conclusion, a lot of private sector people. Solyndra was very highly rated by Forbes magazine, for example, by the Wall Street Journal, who looked at these as as a growth industry. So the private sector reached a lot of the same conclusions that the experts at the Department of Energy made. These are difficult calls every time.
The president has said, though, on more than one occasion that he has no regrets about how the process was handled. I mean, how does he not have a regret about $535 million being, flushed down the toilet?
Well, certainly we wish that it had turned out differently. But it doesn't change the fact that these are the kinds of loan guarantees that are actually going to be really important to investing in a growth industry. The question really at the end of the day is this something that the United States is going to invest in? And are we going to have an energy industry, a renewable energy industry in this country that is going to be able to compete with China and India and those other places? And that's really the question that we're going to face at the end of the day.
All right, one last question on this. And the Department of Energy was told by the Treasury Department that you cannot restructure a loan and displace the taxpayer. Yet the loan was restructured, and the owners of Solyndra, the investors, were put ahead of the taxpayers. That seems to be a merit that is actually against the law. I'm wondering where the White House stands on that, if it actually was against the law.
That was not the conclusion that was reached by the Department of Energy lawyers who looked at it. So I'm not an attorney, and I haven't looked at the deal. So
all right, when it comes to all right, but
the Department of Energy concluded.
All right, here's just from a couple miles away from the White House. If I'm looking at a money question on the law, on the legality issue, am I going to go with the Treasury Department or am I going to go with the Department of Energy? I tend to go with the Department of Treasury on a law that affects money.
The career bureaucrats, the career people who are making this decision at the Department of Energy ask their lawyers about what they should do. I actually think that's exactly what we would expect.
There are increasing calls on Capitol Hill by some that say that Eric Holder needs to come clean on what happened with Fast and Furious. His public statements and his sworn testimony before Congress seems to be at odds with much of the memos that have been released by the White House and by the Department of Justice. Should he go and make a public statement about this? Should he try to clean this up? And does the president, without doubt, stand behind Eric Holder as his Attorney General? Without
a doubt, without hesitation, he does. And the reason for that is that the testimony that he has offered has been entirely consistent. He said as much repeatedly, and he sent a letter to Capitol Hill on Friday afternoon, I believe, to make this case. I mean, the truth is the rhetoric that's been coming out of the Republican congressional leaders on this issue has been appalling, to be honest with you. To suggest that there are law enforcement officials who are an accessory to murder is a pretty outlandish claim, and frankly, doesn't do a lot of justice to an issue that deserves a lot of serious attention.
You have guns that were walked over the border into Mexico that were lost and used in a crime and a murder against a border agent. You can't see where Republicans would come to that conclusion, or at least use those words?
I think it is entirely inappropriate for them to use those words. Certainly it's worthy of an investigation. It's why there's an ongoing one at the Department of Justice. If the folks in Congress believe they need to conduct an investigation, then they should probably move forward, but they should do it in a responsible way.
Well, what about the idea?
Rhetoric doesn't help anybody.
What about the idea?
And frankly, it only tends to erode their claims.
What about the idea that some have suggested that perhaps there needs to be an independent or special prosecutor? Would the president support that idea to make sure we get the answers without any doubt about the credibility of the answers?
I'm not in a position to weigh in on that yet. I don't know that we've necessarily made that decision. There are some ongoing investigations here, and we should let those move forward before we reach conclusions about whether.
But aren't you letting the fox sort of guard the hen house in that investigation? I mean, after all, the Attorney General has a big stake in the outcome of that investigation.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you say that again. I
said, aren't you letting the fox guard the hen house because the Attorney General has a very decided interest in the outcome of that investigation?
Well, I have complete confidence that that we're going to follow the kinds of rules that we need to make to ensure that we get to the bottom of this. It's something that the president's committed to. I know it's something that the Attorney General is committed to. And if Congress wants to participate or conduct their own investigation, it's certainly appropriate for them to do so if they would like. But hopefully they're going to pursue it in a responsible way and not with this sort of inflammatory, politically charged rhetoric that frankly undermines, the merits there.
All right. Josh Earnest, we always appreciate you coming on our broadcast.
Gentlemen, thanks for the opportunity. Have a good day. Okay?
Thanks, Josh.
Bye-bye.
All righty.